Hello again. This is a series of Annapurna Pluriversities. Uh, Professor Pramod Parajuli, thought leader and educator for the Annapurna Pluriversities. We are continuing after a month of gap on the series. And today I want to introduce one item for which we might bring in uh, 5 to 7 sessions according to the need, but just the introduction. The first introduction is the idea of relations of ruling between a very uneven power structure in the global economy and political situation, how the relations of ruling were administered after the Second World War in 3 phases. One, right after the Second World War, 1945, the idea of development and the hegemony of US, replacing the previous colonial power structure like the British, the French, the Portuguese, the Spanish. The Americans come to the scene after Second World War and claim that now there is going to be a new world order under their hegemony, and that will not be a colonial power structure, but the idea called development, meaning bringing everybody to an American model of good life. And many people joke about the Kansas, where the prairie was bulldozed and created a farm in Kansas, middle of US, is the model, or Illinois, for the rest of the world. Fascinating. And each of these, that goes on from 1945 to about 1940 years, 1985. And in 1987, we have another version of it, which I consider as a European replacement of the American hegemony and a European idea of sustainability. And Our Common Future is the main document for that, which I will explain more in other session. Then, after about 30 years of 1987, the idea of sustainability and the UN making this sustainable decade, right, which will be coming to close in 2025, while that phase of European hegemonic idea of sustainability and America kind of following that path, but not taking a lead, and the COVID appears in 2019. So about 30 to 32 years after 1987 and a publication of the report called Our Common Future, the phase of sustainability, how it worked as a relations of ruling, comes to an end. And now, after 2019, 2017, what we have, I call a regeneration as a relations of ruling. But the idea of regeneration compared to the idea of sustainability, which kind of worked as a relationship ruling as an umbrella concept for 30 years, 1987 to, let's say, 2017, 2019, and development, the idea of development, 2045 to 2085, 87, 40 year. Now that is replaced by what I propose is the regeneration here. As I do, I teach and formulate the idea of regenerative studies, how that works, regenerative learning, regenerative leadership. We will be talking about those themes throughout this series. But what is the difference at the regeneration phase is, rather than following a European hegemony or American hegemony, over the rest of the world's thinking, curriculum development, program development, what we have now is the operating principles of nature becomes a guiding principle for everybody. For a Vietnamese peasant, to a Nepali entrepreneur, or a Chilean mountain climber, or a fisherman, or a laboratory in Portugal, the nature becomes our common denominator. So it doesn't matter whether it is done by America or UK or Vietnam or Laos or a person or a community in Congo. What matters is in the regenerative principle and indicator, is it enhancing life or not enhancing life? Is it making our system, life system, more alive, or it is diminishing that aliveness? Do you see? So my hope is that in the regenerative phase, we will be addressing those disparities and unevenness in the discourse of sustainability as well as development. And in all these three phases, the phase of development 1945 to 1985, 87, 40, 42 years, the phase of sustainability from 1987 to 2017, 2019, 32-year phase. And after 2019, what I have been talking about is the combined climate coronaviruses disruptions, about which we will be hearing, you will be hearing a lot. In all these three, there is another social dynamic, a conceptual idea that I would like to introduce. In the outside, at the front package, the language will be hegemonic. That USA, for example, Harry Truman in 1949, January 20th, in his inaugural address, he makes it very clear that now US is the hegemonic power in economy, in industry, in military, in education, in our thinking. And he says we are different from the colonial system, and our system is bringing everybody up to American model. And I will be explaining in other sessions how that idea spread all over the world like a wildfire. But behind that hegemony, there always was the industrial military complex. US's dominance was behind it, but on the front was the idea of development. Same thing about sustainability. In the face outside was the idea of sustainability. We need to sustain what we have done, but not compromising the needs of the future generation. That is the basic idea of sustainability. But continue the US and the European hegemony and take the more soft paddle, you see, equality, diversity, the negotiations for climate, biodiversity, appropriate technologies, all these come. And in that language, we see the language of Sweden, Norway, Finland, Netherlands, Denmark, France, Germany, you see, Switzerland. Fascinating. But that again comes to a close when the COVID hits and we begin to face a completely different reality. And one of the sessions I will be explaining is a trademark of that period of sustainability, a closing remark by French President in the beginning of 2024, where he sums up that paradigm. and one session I will be explaining and reading from him, from his statement, what was the dream, what was the design, what was the belief. But when it comes to the 2024 and 2025, everything crumbles. And as you can see with the election of Trump, the war, Ukraine war, on and on and on. So anyway, uh, so a series of sessions will be explaining these three phases under the kind of social methodology called hegemony and dominance.